Okay, so today what we're going to be talking about is really just the fundamentals, as basic as I can get, about how to approach searching all of the library's resources and getting you well on your way to finding content to be able to do whatever it is you're doing, whether you're a student working on a paper, a graduate student working on a thesis, even a faculty member working on some type of publication, um, to give you some kind of framework for approaching how to begin searching the wealth of information and resources that are available to you through the Rooney Library. So today, this is kind of my agenda, but I think these are the key considerations that should go into thinking about how to approach searching the library's resources. So I always encourage students especially to take a very close look at the assignment instructions that are given to them. Just because a lot of times within those instructions, there will be some critical pieces of information that will inform how you approach searching the library. So you may be told a certain number and type of specific source type to use when completing that assignment. So for example, you need to use 5 peer-reviewed articles. And that type of information will very much direct how you engage with the library's resources to find the information you need to complete that particular assignment. And I also tell students, be on the lookout for those in those instructions for the things that you're told that you're not permitted to use. So you may be told, don't use the results of a Google search, right? Don't rely on Wikipedia and things like that. So really paying close attention to and studying those assignment instructions can give you a really good start to finding information in the library before you even click on the library's webpage to begin your searching. It's also important to consider your database selection. So oftentimes, especially at the undergraduate level, if you're doing research in a business class, then it makes a lot of sense to locate and use a business database rather than certainly something that's not very related at all, like a literary database, or something that might give you perhaps too much information, like using the library's discovery search. So I always encourage students to be discipline specific in terms of where they go to do their searching as well. And then when it comes to crafting that search string, which for me is the funnest part of it, um, I know students sometimes get discouraged about those things, but to me this is the fun part of it. Really isolating the key terms of your research question or your research topic, and then leveraging those in your searching, and then trying also to isolate and use subjects or established descriptors in the database to get relevant information. And this will make sense when we go through and look at an example. And then leveraging any limiters that might be relevant for a particular assignment or a particular need. And some of those can be very helpful, especially in meeting some assignment criteria like using only academic content. And we'll show you that here in just a minute as well. And then not necessarily key considerations, but reminders when we're doing our searching is that we want to make sure that as we're looking through our search results and picking out sources to use for our research, that we're critically evaluating those sources to make sure that they're the type of information that we need to fill the information need that we have at present. And so there is a really fun little test. I really like the name of it because it just sticks and it helps us to remember these things that we should be considering. So there is something called the CRAP test, and I'll show you that. And we'll look at a couple of articles to apply this test to determine if the sources that we're using or the type that we need to be using. We always want to remember to cite our sources. So part of research is doing our research ethically. So we always want to remember to give attribution to those sources that we're using by properly citing them within the text of our work that we're writing, and then also in our reference list or our works cited page or bibliography, whatever it might be called. And then last of all, just remembering the nature of research, and that is that research is an iterative process. It is trial and error. And I know that for some folks that presents a frustration, but like I said, for me, that's kind of the fun part of it. Just trying different things, different combinations of terms and limiters to get the results that are exactly what I'm after. So with all of that in mind, we will come to the library's webpage and kind of apply some of those things that we just talked about. So we're going to assume at this point that we've already read our assignment instructions. And today my example is a very rudimentary. So I am in a business class and I'm just writing a short paper on women-owned businesses. And so that's kind of my very broad, loose topic that we're going to use today to apply some of those ideas that we just talked about. So first of all, we want to find a discipline-specific database, right? I'm in my business class writing my paper in this particular discipline. So I'm going to come to my list of databases, which we looked at, last month. And we know that we can filter this list by subject. So I'm going to come and find my business databases. And very conveniently, there at the top is listed for me my best bet database. So if I'm gonna only pick one database to search for in this field for information resources, this is the one that will probably get me the best bang for my buck. So I'm gonna go ahead and enter into this database. So I will note that there, in that list, there were 9 databases listed that were relevant to business. And so if you wanted to, you could select multiple business databases to search at once. So this does kind of expand the scope of what we're searching and what we might get back, but it still is limiting us.
I'll say,
Yes.
I don't know if this is just me, but the PowerPoint slide that I'm seeing is still the reminders agenda.
Oh, okay. I'm just going to close that out to make sure that we're not seeing
Are we supposed to be seeing something else?
You should be seeing something else, yes.
Okay.
Let me reshare my screen here and hopefully we'll get back on track. All right, are you seeing something different now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you.
So let me very quickly go back and show you where we are and how we got here. So from the library's webpage, we're clicking on our databases link and filtering this by business databases, and Business Source Ultimate is the one that we clicked on to get into here. And then by clicking on the link at the very top of choose databases, we can select multiple business databases. And so, you may remember in your mind's eye seeing 1 or 2 on that previous page that would be relevant for you. And so you can just check those off and click that OK button, and you would then be searching multiple business databases at the same time. So to begin our search, we're just going to type in, women-owned businesses. That's what we're searching here today in our sample project that we're working on. And so our result list, we notice here that we've got just about 3,000 items that are returned on this list. And certainly, that's more than anybody is willing to look through. So, so there are some ways that we can limit this and yet retain the intent of our search. And so one of the first things that we can do is we can move away from this keyword that we just put in there from our topic of women-owned businesses and instead leverage the subjects that are used throughout the database. So this section labeled subject terms, these are, so for all the content in these databases, what has happened is that a librarian has reviewed the content and they've decided that, this is what this article is about. And so using a pre-existing list of phrases and terms for what is meant to be, the entire universe of knowledge, they select a term that is then applied to this particular article in this section. So I tell students to think of this as like library hashtags because, we all use hashtags when we're posting things on social media. So, we can say that, last night we had tacos for dinner because it's Taco Tuesday, right? So we take our picture of our tacos, use our hashtag Taco Tuesday, hashtag Tuesday dinner, and post that. And so anybody who clicks on that little hashtag Tuesday dinner is going to get back all the posts on Twitter that use that same hashtag. And so this is essentially the same thing. By clicking on any one of these links that is a subject term, we're going to get back all the other articles in this database that use that same descriptor. So that brought down our search results just a little bit. So we're now down to about 2,300. But I think it's at this point that we really need to think about, using limiters and really, again, considering our assignment instructions. So in this case, I'm going to assume that in my assignment, I can only use recent scholarship. So I'm going to just change my results here to focus on those things that were written in the past 5 years or so. And so that brings my list down considerably, right, to 199. There are some other limiters that I could use. So, you know, again, thinking about our assignment instructions, we could click scholarly peer-reviewed journals, and this is only going to get back that academic content, right? So scholarly, peer-reviewed, academic, we're going to assume those are all pretty much synonymous, but what that means is that everything here on my result list now has gone through this strict editorial process where experts in the field have reviewed this content, they have checked its accuracy, and made sure that this is representing solid research in this field. And so we can trust that the content is credible, it's reliable, and that it's accurate. Another thing that we can do is limit by full text. I'll go ahead and apply that one just because, you know, we have a fair number here and that really doesn't impact my results too much. So now everything that I'm in my result list here is only content that I can access immediately now on the screen, either as HTML full text or PDF full text. And then I'll mention that you can also limit by source type. So if you only wanted, so in this case, you know, we already checked the box for scholarly peer-reviewed journals. And so that's what we're seeing here. And then there's an outlier here of a magazine, and that may just be some kind of miscoding or something. But we can also limit by language so that if we're, you know, only proficient in English, then we can check that box off and make sure that everything we're getting back is only available in English. What I'm going to do is uncheck my peer-reviewed selector here so that we can take a look at some different types of sources and get back some of those limiters, right? So here we see all the different types of sources that we're getting back here. So there are academic journals that we saw, but also things like newspapers, trade publications, magazines. So those content types that would not necessarily be scholarly or peer-reviewed. And you also see our language limiter is appearing now because we have some content that's not available in English. So I'm going to assume that this is an okay list for me to begin working through and looking at for my particular paper. And so I'm going to go ahead and jump in here and just point out a few things about what we see here. We've already taken a very quick look at this to look at the subject terms, but some other things I wanted to point out are the abstract. So as you're doing your searching and looking for relevant resources, you can read this very brief summary of the article and decide if this is relevant for what you're researching or not. If it is, that's great, and you're well on your way to collecting your sources for your writing project. If not, then you've really only spent a minute or two to look through that to decide if it's relevant. And then the DOI is located down here at the very bottom of the record. And so I know that when it comes time to citing our sources, that DOI element is often very important, especially if we're citing things in APA. And since, you know, today in our example, we're living in the business world and business discipline, then that would be important to us. On the left-hand side, you'll find those links to the full text. We'll come back and look at this in just a little bit. And then over here on the right-hand side are all these different tools that you can leverage as you're conducting your research. So this Google Drive link, if you like to use Google Drive and all things Google and whatnot, then when you click on that, it will, you know, direct you into your Google sign-in, and then it will actually place a copy of the PDF of the full text into your Google Drive for you. So that's a nice way to collect your content that you'll be using for your research. You can add content to a folder. So when I click on this little button here, it adds a little paper into my folder, and it does the same up here at the top of the page. And what this does is it allows me to, you know, potentially take my list of, you know, say maybe I had that 30 list of articles on that one page that we did our sample search on, and I can go through there and pick out, you know, 5 or 6 articles, and based on the title, maybe reading the abstract, decide this is something that I really think would be helpful for me in completing this assignment, and just put them into that folder. And then at the end of my session, once I've got enough of what I need to complete my assignment, I can come up into this folder and email that result list to myself. And if there's a PDF associated with any of those articles, then that PDF would also be emailed to me in that result list. One thing to note about this is that this is a temporary folder. So once we close out this screen and close out this session, that folder and its contents will go away. There is a way to come in and sign into this interface and create your own account so that you can permanently save contents to a folder. But for today, we're not going to do that. And we're just going to realize that this is a temporary folder. So once we close things out today, that will go away. I think print, email, and save is pretty self-explanatory. And remembering, one of those other considerations, we want to cite our sources. This little button that's labeled Cite will generate for us in the middle of the screen this particular article formatted in any number. It's just a huge long list of style guides and manuals and whatnot. And so we can come here to this APA section, and here is this article formatted for our reference list in APA. So I personally encourage students to use this. I think it's a great time saver. It makes it allows you to avoid some things like typos or forgetting to add something into your citation that just by human error we might neglect. And so it's a great way to save time. It's a great way to ensure that your citation is full. But then I also encourage students to double check it because it is machine generated. And at this point, we're still smarter than the machines. And so we want to make sure that we pull out our APA manual and make sure that this is formatted correctly. So make sure that all the elements are in there that need to be in there, that the placement of those elements is correct, that the formatting is right, the punctuation is right, so on and so forth. But we just want to do our due diligence and make sure that what we're copying over to put into our reference list is complete and accurate. Some of these other features are, more advanced type things that we'll bypass those for now. But then there's also this permalink, and I'll click on this because, sometimes it just depends on your instructor and your assignment. Again, you may be asked to provide a link to the source where you found it in the library database. And so this is what you would want to use to do that. It will produce this permanent link up here. And there are similar features in all library databases. So most of our databases are on this platform, which is EBSCOhost, but we have some others, EBSCO, JSTOR, so on and so forth. But all of them will have a similar feature like this, where you can click to get a stable URL or a permanent link, or whatever the nomenclature may be. It will produce for you this shorter, stable URL that you can use to embed into your paper so that your instructor can verify the legitimacy of the source, and they can get to it and take a closer look at it if they want to or need to. What you would want to avoid is using the link that's up here for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's huge, right? If you copy and paste this into your paper, it'll take up like half the page. And so that will just look terrible on your reference list. And then the second reason you would want to avoid using that is that it's a session specific URL. And so when anyone clicks on that, it'll just take them to an error page because the session will have expired. And so you want to make sure that you avoid those. So I'm going to come back to my result list, and we're going to take a look at just a couple of these articles a little bit more closely in their full text. So my preference is for PDF full text, just because it just has the look and feel of the print article, and I like that. But some of the advantages of using the PDF full text is that it will give you like the pagination of the article. So especially if you're doing something like directly quoting from the source, then you'll have that reference to put into your in-text citation that would be just a little bit more difficult to get to with the HTML full text, if not sometimes impossible to get to with the HTML full text. And so that's why I favor the PDF if it's available. And again, pay attention to your assignment instructions, because sometimes your instructors may say they only want you to use something that is PDF full text. So thinking about evaluating our sources, there is a LibGuide. If you remember where those are on our library homepage, we do have these research guides in that little menu there. And one of those is a library research basics guide, which includes a section on evaluating sources. So here's that crap test that I was talking about, right? So these are some of the things that you should consider as you're looking through your sources, deciding if they're going to be relevant or useful for your assignment or not. So you'll want to consider things like currency. when that information was written or when it was revised or updated, especially if you're looking at content on the web. You want to look at relevance. Does the article that you're looking at even relate to the topic that you're researching? And is the information written at the right level? So is it scholarly? Is it more popular? And how will that impact your use of that information or not? When we're talking about the authority, we're going to look at the author's credentials and their qualifications and affiliations and experience and make sure that this is an authoritative source that we're using. In terms of accuracy, is this source that we're looking at citing other sources? Are they doing that correctly? Are there any errors in the content or in the presentation of the content? So things like spelling and grammar. And then, is it reviewed or is it refereed? And then the purpose, why did this person write this? Was it written to inform us, to teach us, just to sell something to us, to persuade us? And we should be looking for that to determine if this is the right type of source for us to use. And then, we really want to be paying attention to any bias or judgment or opinion that might be communicated in the particular source that we're looking at as we're determining if it's the right source for us to use. So apply the CRAP test to determine if what we're using here is relevant or not, or if we should kind of just keep on looking for something that kind of fits the bill a little bit better. So when we come over here to this particular article from the journal, which is small business economics, some of the things that we can look for here. So here we have the authors that have written this. So these guys are affiliated with an academic institution, and there we have the department where they work at this university. So that kind of helps us to say that this is probably an authoritative source. As we look at what they've written here, as we scroll down through here, we can see that many sources are being cited. So this is very academic in its presentation. We're citing a lot of different sources throughout here. Those little blue hyperlinks really help us to see that very clearly. And then as we continue on, we'll start to see that we have lots of tables and charts and graphs and things where they're presenting their findings in this way to us. And then toward the very end, here are those lists of references. So I think we can be pretty confident that this is probably a good quality work for us to go ahead and use in our research. And then we'll come back and take a look at another article. We'll just go ahead and click on number 2 here and look at this in its full text. And so immediately we see that there is a big difference, right? So the academic stuff, let's just admit it, it's a little bit more boring in its presentation, right? It's kind of plain Jane, not much going on there in terms of aesthetics. And so here you have this really nice, clean looking document. There are pictures in here, and it just looks really fun to look at, right? It's very engaging. But some other things that we can see here is, here we're seeing advertisements that are appearing in this particular content. So we're getting that type of information in here. Again, some additional advertisements being placed in this particular content. And so that kind of may dissuade us from using this particular source because we're also seeing, granted, the nature of this content makes it a little different. But the things we would be looking for are those things like advertisements. Are there any sources being cited? So clearly here we don't have any academic sources that are being cited in this content. And so this may be one, as we take a closer look at it, we decide maybe just doesn't quite meet the requirements for our assignment. And so we'll just kind of skip over this one and come back to our result list to find something that's more appropriate for what it is that we're doing. Okay. So that is essentially it, right? So this is a very quick introduction to very basic searching, keeping in mind some of those things that we talked about just a few minutes ago, making sure that we're paying close attention to the parameters of the project that we're working on, most likely an assignment, and we're considering that. We're making the right choices for the database that we're using, favoring something that's discipline specific if we can. Really isolating the keywords from our research question, our research topic, And if you are wondering, which ones of those should I pick, it's a good idea to connect with your professor if you're a student, to say, which are the keywords that I really should be focusing on when I go to do my searching. Connect with us at the library. We're happy to offer up suggestions. The nice thing about connecting with your professor is they may give you some ideas for key terms used in your field that maybe we wouldn't know in the library. So, I've helped students in the past research the colonization of Africa by European countries. And so when students connect with a professor, she was able to tell them, well, use this phrase, scramble for Africa. And that really brought back some really relevant results. And that was something that I didn't know, right? That's not my academic background, but because of her expertise in that area, she knew that that would help students get the results that they needed when they came to searching for resources within library databases. So make that connection there to get those ideas for the terms that you might want to use in your searching. And then, again, especially considering your assignment criteria, really leverage the limiters that are available to very quickly get that type of content that you need to be using to meet assignment criteria in terms of currency, in terms of source type, in terms of, whether it's academic or not. And then, pay close attention to the content that you're looking at, apply the CRAP test, make sure that you're getting the types of sources that your professors will be expecting you to use when you're writing their papers, and make sure, to do the right thing, be ethical, and be sure to cite those sources that you're getting, leveraging those tools embedded in library databases to make that easier on yourself. So are there any questions? I don't see anything in my chat here. I'm going to stop my screen sharing. And you are free, please feel free to, unmute, ask away any questions that you might have. And I'll put my video back on so everybody can see me. Okay. Well, my time is up. I have 1 minute. So it's like, here's my librarian watch, right? So everybody has to have their watch. I've got my librarian watch, and it says I have a minute left. So if you don't have any questions, thanks for coming. I appreciate it. And we'll have one more of these lunchtime library webinars coming up in March that will focus on interlibrary loan. So if you don't even know what interlibrary loan is, come to that session and you'll learn all about it, probably more than you ever wanted to know about it. So put that on your calendar. I'd love to see you again then. If you have any other questions, please feel free to call, email, and I'd be happy to answer those questions too. All right. All right. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thank you.